For better or worse, globalism is alive and well. And so what we're seeing more and more of is companies worldwide trying to compete to sell their goods and services. And you're seeing more and more countries switch from a communistic or command economy towards more of an economy based on capitalism and free trade. Some issues we're going to go over in this chapter is measuring global trade, barriers to and promotion of global trade, international economic communities, participating in the global marketplace, the impact of multinational corporations, and some trends that we've seen happen in global trade. Right now, the United States is the largest importer and exporter in the world, and we have to continue to emphasize global trade because it improves relations and eases tensions among nations. It also helps bolster other countries' economies. It helps to raise other standards of living and improve the quality of life for countries worldwide. There's a lot of debate over whether or not this is true, but this is the stance I'm going to take in this chapter. The United States exports about a fifth of its industrial products and about a third of its farm products overseas. We export about $850 billion worth of goods to foreign markets every year. Right now, over 250 companies export 85% of the goods they make overseas. When you think about it, 250 companies, that's not a lot, but that number is really growing because the global market's becoming more and more accessible to smaller companies. And of course, the internet is one of the reasons why foreign markets are more accessible. Almost every American business person appreciates that they have to be responsive to international business opportunities. Not only is there, money to be made within the U.S. borders, but there's a lot of money to be made overseas. Most businesses are also aware of the threats from foreign competition. As globalism grows and grows, foreign competitors become more of a threat to businesses within the U.S. Businesses are also appreciating international networks for production and distribution. Businesses are trying to figure out, is it cheaper to set up a business overseas, or is it cheaper just to try and ship products from within the United States with the U.S. as a home base? An interesting statistic is Coca-Cola derives over 80% of its profits from overseas. Two very important concepts to global trade are the balance of trade and the balance of payments. The U.S. has a negative balance of trade and a negative balance of payments. What this means is that we import much more than we export. This isn't true for Japan. Even though the U.S. is the biggest exporter, we still bring in more products than we actually sell abroad. But this isn't true for Japan. They export more than they import. This is, for the United States, this is known as a trade deficit. Although the trade deficit declined somewhat in the early 90s, it's still pretty huge. A lot of companies avoid selling products globally, but pretty much everyone I know, and including myself, we all buy foreign products. We may even buy goods we think are made in the United States, but they aren't. So how do you reduce an unfavorable balance of trade and payments like the United States has? Well, one thing is we can reduce dependence on imports, sell more exports, reduce foreign investment, and reduce our military abroad. Of course, all of these things sound pretty difficult, and they are. Our balance of payments went from $290 billion in 1999 to $375 billion in 2000, and this number, of course, is getting bigger and bigger. Another important concept is the exchange rate, which is the price of one country's currency in terms of another country's currency. Absolute advantage refers to a country that can sell a product at a much lower price than any other country, or a country that's the only country that can provide a given product. For example, you can only buy Colombian coffee from Colombia. Also, the United States is one of the very few countries that can sell reusable spacecraft parts or really high-tech items. Comparative advantage is when each country really specializes in products that it can make the most readily and cheaply, and they trade those products for other items that other countries specialize in. For example, Italy specializes in making products out of fine leather, like purses and belts. Japan can easily make electronics. They're set up for that sort of thing. The United States is also set up for making cruise liners or aircraft. If the United States can produce most of the goods that other countries do, then why do we engage in trade? For example, the United States can make lots of toys and sporting goods, so why do we bother buying them from China? Well, because other countries can make things better or cheaper than the United States can. Brazil does great coffee, China and Mexico can make clothes really cheaply, and Japan can make great electronics products. So, in the spirit of free competition, we buy products from other countries, and they buy our best products. But there are a lot of barriers to global trade. There are natural barriers, for example, just the sheer distance from one country to another, and language barriers. For example, why is it that we wouldn't ship beef from Kansas to Siberia? Well, because shipping steaks to Siberia is way too far and it's way too heavy for air travel. What would make sense to transport by plane? Computers. They're fairly lightweight, but each computer system you can get a lot of money for. Flowers, because obviously they don't hold for very long and you can still charge a lot for them. Seafood, where the turnaround time it has to be short. But let's say if you were making Barbie dolls, it wouldn't make sense to ship Barbie dolls out of Taiwan by plane. You'd probably decide to go the slow boat to China. And also in regards to language, you need to be able to negotiate trade agreements to get the right goods.